Well, exactly. It's right here next to my bookshelf. See, so I can just pull something right off and go to work. But yes, this is not my standard spot, but I'm mixing it up today.
Yeah. It's hard. These beautiful spring days, it's like I escaped to the outside deck yesterday for the second hearing. It was nice to be outside.
Yeah, no, I would kind of love to take these outside, but it's a little tricky.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I take my chance when I get it.
No, you should. You absolutely should. All right, let's just see. And of course, my neighbor's doing construction, so it's going to be some background noise all day.
It's sort of Murphy's Law. It's a construction or a lawnmower.
Yeah.
I remember doing IEP meetings at Perkins, and every time it'd be a beautiful spring day, and they would gather for the meeting, and the family would be there, and everybody would be there. And as soon as we start the meeting, the lawnmower would start. And going like, how do we do this? This always happens.
Inevitable. Yes. Okay. I'll just shoot everyone a note to remind them the working session's about to start. Let's see, what are our topics? All right, well, that's been sent. And Carrie or Candace, are we ready to go?
Good morning, Madam Chair. I just need to hit record and we'll be all set.
All right, just let me know.
We're all set.
Great, excellent. I'm calling this working session of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee to order. For the record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and also the chair of the Council's Ways and Means Committee, joined here by my colleague, Liz Braden, with other colleagues to come. This working session is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. This is part of the council's multiple month budget review process. And we do these working sessions in order to generate questions for the budget hearings themselves. So as a member of the public, you're very welcome to testify at those hearings. We don't take public testimony at these working sessions. But if what the questions you hear the counselors asking today pique your interest and you think that you might want to come and testify on a related subject, if you go to boston.gov/council-budget, you'll see the whole calendar of hearings. And if you go to boston.gov/budget-testify, you'll find out all the ways to testify. You can come join us in the Zoom. You can give us a video, which we'll attach. You can also email us and send written testimony to ccc.wm@boston.gov. And if none of the departmental hearings are convenient and you want to come in the evening, on May 25th at 6 p.m., we'll have one that's dedicated to public testimony focused on BPS. And then June 3rd at 6 p.m., one focused on any aspect of the budget. So you'd be very welcome to come to that as well. You can also informally tweet us your questions using the hashtag BOSSBudget. It's BOS budget. And yeah, we'd love to have you participate. Today's working session is on docket 0524 to 0526, orders for the FY22 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations for the school department and for other post-employment benefits. Docket 0527 to 0528, orders for capital fund transfer appropriations. And dockets 0529 to 0531, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. Those are the whole set of budget dockets that sort of encompass all departments. And then it's also today considering docket 0544, order authorizing an appropriation from the Parkman Fund, and docket 0545, order authorizing an appropriation from the PEG Access Fund. But in English, what we're actually focusing on today are the Parks and Recreation Department, the Department of Innovation and Technology, Inspectional Services Department, Boston Planning and Development Agency. And then the Parkman Fund is associated with parks, and the PEG Access Fund with DoIT. And so the idea of these working sessions, short and sweet, is just to put questions on the record so that we can send them over to the administration. So since I'm joined here first and foremost by my colleague, Councillor Liz Braden, Liz, we can jump right in with your questions.
You know, my questions are often stimulated by the questions of my colleagues. So this morning, I had very few questions actually. The one question I had was with regard to McKinney Park. It's one of the parks that has had a master plan that is sort of getting old at this stage, and we still haven't moved towards implementation of any recommendations. So I'd like a timeline for when we might expect the renovations of the park to start. It's right adjacent to the Faneuil Gardens housing, and it's a well-used and much needed park. So we hope that we can move along and expedite that process as soon as possible. I do know that there may be a shortfall in funds to complete the work, but how much funding are we short, and when could we expect that would be that would move forward? That's the parks one. Yeah, I'll come back. And then the DoIT, you know, with increasing cyber attacks on municipalities, like I think it was Haverhill or someone in the North Shore had a cyber attack on their school department recently. I wonder where our DoIT department are in terms of cybersecurity, and if they have the resources to, you know, to stand up a robust defense against a cyber attack, and what sort of policies do they have in the event of a cyber attack that holds us hostage? I think ransom holds us to ransom. I'd like more information about that. And let's see, parks. And ISD really, in terms of enforcing our short-term rentals, do they have how many violations have they uncovered, and what penalties were handed out for violations, and do they have enough resources to enforce those regulations? Also, in relation to our new legislation on condo conversion, that's another area of they need to scrutinize, and also to see if they have enough resources to implement that new legislation. And those are the things right off the top of my head. So I will keep thinking.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll jump in with some parks questions.
Thank you.
And then we'll see when we're joined by others, but put some things on the record here. So one question, I think, you know, everyone in the council is very interested in the urban forestry plan, in kind of street tree planting. We doubled that budget last year, but then of course, obviously, you know, also we had the realities of COVID. So interested in knowing, like, did we get that planting done? Where are we? When will the urban forestry plan be finished? And in terms of implementation, you know, obviously a key piece is adding new street trees, but very important also is preserving older trees. So just hearing about kind of what our resources and efforts are there, and where we are on actually filling out all the arborist positions, because I think we have like 5 positions, but maybe only 2 active arborists at the moment. So definitely just kind of an overall update on those tree fronts. And I know I will just ask for Councillor Flaherty how much we're paying for tree pruning contracts yearly. I know that's something where he thinks we should bring that in-house and have the tree pruning capabilities and equipment here in Boston, because we know it's a sort of permanent issue that we have. And I think, you know, the idea of, like, if we're going to build a more robust city arbor that we've got to have the resources to match is an important one. Would love, and relatedly, related to the conversations that we're having with environment and the green jobs pilot and everything, would love to understand how many of our parks employees are BPS graduates, how we can work with Madison Park community groups, this larger effort to create a pipeline for parks jobs for our residents and students. My district always wants to know about funding for the park ranger mounted unit. So would love to hear about that and where they are relative to last year. Would love if parks could address racial and gender equity in procurement and also in hiring. Whether we really have the adequate staff to maintain the urban wilds. Or, again, that's a program that we look to kind of increase. And so, do we need more staffing capacity? I would love to hear about the parcel priority program and what the latest with that is. We hear a lot of excitement about that and acquiring parcels for open space around the city. Would love to hear about the, this is a very micro, my district question, but certainly in the Back Bay Fens, what we're doing to address the Canada Geese population, sort of what the timeline is when we get graffiti on the historic bridges for people to expect it to be cleaned up. I know that, we maintain a lot of the Back Bay Fens, but then there are margins of it that are sort of along the parkways that are DCRs that often go unweeded and sort of unaddressed. And so curious about the coordination on that front. Excited about the Mission Hill Playground project that's about to launch. That's going to be under construction pretty imminently. Just want to confirm the timeline is kind of where we thought it would be on that. Very, very excited about the Boston Common Master Plan. I do want to check in on where that is sitting. I know a couple of things that have just been underscored for me recently are, first of all, the fact that there should be an opportunity to do, I think there should be an opportunity in that big space for some basketball. I know that's something that a lot of our young people and a really diverse set of young people look for around the city. And then, just confirming that there will be public bathrooms in that plan, updated, increased ones, because that's been such an urgent need we've seen so strongly in this crisis. And confirming whether, I think there isn't a plan for them on Copley Square right now, public bathrooms, but I do think that's another thing that we should be looking at. I think there is a plan at City Hall, just thinking about sort of permanent public infrastructure on that front, since it's so important, something everybody needs. Other things, where we are on the Kenmore Square block of the ComAv Mall, that project, and how I can be helpful with community engagement. I think I've talked before with the commissioner and others. There's a really great group of multilingual seniors who live right there at Kenmore Abbey, and would love to make sure that we really are finding a way to engage them in the conversation about that park, and also just understand the timeline, because COVID shifted so many of our timelines. So those are my, off the top of my head, parks questions for now. On the DoIT front, I know that one of the FY21 stated goals was reducing contracted services, but they seem to have gone up in FY21 and are budgeted for another increase in FY22. So just understanding what's achievable, how the goalposts are moving there. And another goal of FY21 was an operational audit in FY21 in order to understand, sort of understand whether DoIT has the optimal structure, staffing, and resources to accomplish its mission. So I'd love to know the findings of that audit. And also, it appears that many of the responsibilities of the department are increasing with new goals and investments. So just want to know whether DoIT has adequate staff and resources to carry out their work, and also kind of strategic planning around prioritization. There's just been so much growth, obviously, in the sort of digital infrastructure of the city. So there's the security questions you asked, Councillor Braden, and also just the kind of operational effectiveness questions. So I will now pause, because I see we've been joined by our president, Matt O'Malley. And so Matt, happy to jump to you. Since we're a small group this morning, we're just doing them all. So it's Parks, ISD, DoIT, and BPDA.
So minor topics to discuss.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Well, good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Councilor Braden, Michelle, Cora, Shane. I don't know if it's Candace or Kerry behind the screen, but great to be with you all. I apologize for being a little bit late, but if with your indulgence, Madam Chair, could I just start ticking through some of the park specific ones? That's the bulk of my issues. Obviously, Franklin Park has been a huge issue that permeates through several city council districts. Delighted that the mayor has called for a task force, which I am on. Not so delighted that they're scheduled to meet Wednesday afternoon. So hopefully we can adjust that going forward, so I can have better participation and not the conflict of our budget, our council meetings. But obviously, among the things I'm most proud of my time on this body was working to secure $25 million for a Franklin Park renovation project that is well underway. But obviously some immediate needs that we need to address is I'd like that discussed. I should have begun this by saying that Commissioner Ryan Woods, and I will say this again publicly, is just doing an absolutely yeoman's job in his role. He's been great. He has been one of the most attentive cabinet chiefs or commissioners that I've dealt with over the last decade plus. So really grateful for his leadership and his team. And we know now the importance even more than ever of green and open space, as they've been a great refuge for so many of us during the last 14 months. Specific questions for the district: Jefferson Park playground improvements in Jamaica Plain. This is a small playground at the end of Grotto Glen. It's got a rope climber that's really only accessible to older children and able-bodied children. So I'm looking forward to really revitalizing it. More and more kids use it. There's been no TLC. I understand that we can't necessarily wave a magic wand for this year, but just hopefully to cue this up for my successor to see to fruition. Billingsfield in West Roxbury is another thing that I'm incredibly proud of. As you know, Madam Chair, you were a huge booster of this last year, and I'll make sure people in West Roxbury know your great support. We were able to secure funding for the renovation. I know that these things can take time, but I need a time period or time. We need to have some sort of a calendar commitment that we're going to have our first open meeting. I believe we've had some conversations via Zoom. I think as we get into the summer, we could possibly do a site community meeting I'd like to see, and to really make sure that we can get that done. We've seen some great activities through the Boston Parks Advocates, great partnerships with Boston Parks and Recreation Department. Want to see that to continue. Programming for children and seniors as well. Pickleball has been an enormously popular new sport, which I have yet to play, but I know we want to make sure that we have great access for as many folks from infants to some of our older Bostonians. Animal care and control is now, I believe, under the Boston Parks and Recreation Department line item. Or Madam Chair, I'm looking to you for, yes, I'm getting a nod. So
yep, we moved from ISD over there.
Correct. Okay, so you want to make sure we have the support there. A concern that I have for them, and I don't know if Ryan will get into this level of specificity during his questions, but talking with colleagues and friends at MSPCA, they've seen a huge number of animals being adopted during pandemic. Sadly, they've also seen then the corollary, a higher number of animals who've been returned. So I'm just curious what trends we've seen with animal care and control. I think it makes enormous sense to see if we can find the funding for a park ombudsman. I know Ryan Woods does this job well, but he's got a million things on his plate. But just having someone who could help create space for questions, answers, as it relates to issues around parties or allowed ATVs, to access to staggered permits, how things are given out for private leagues, youth leagues, etc. So be really great for us and for the public to have a park ombudsman to help answer many of these questions. Additionally, I think having Urban Wilds, an additional staff member to help oversee and be a point person for 143 urban wilds around the city. That's something that I would certainly advocate for. Obviously, the urban forest master plan and arboricultural capacity. We were able to get funding several years ago for a LiDAR study, basically a large drone flying over the city to measure our green canopy and our, which is decent, but still we need a lot more room for improvement. So I want to hear a little more specificity on that. And I believe that may be it for now. Obviously, there's some other operating costs, Stonewall maintenance south of Jamaica Pond at the Prince Street edge, as well as Francis Park Memorial between Perkins and the Arborway, which is on the Jamaica Plain / Boston Brookline border. I know everyone on this body is a fervent supporter of the park ranger, particularly the mounted unit, which provide education, information, and security. Getting more water fountains and water filling stations in our parks and playgrounds. That was an early hearing order I did. I know that they are now part of the specs, but we want to make sure that we can get those. Again, this is a service that we should be giving that's good for the taxpayer and also good for the environment. And it's crucial that we not only have the water fountains or the bubblers, but with the water filling stations. And I would argue having the dog bowls at the bottom as well is a great opportunity to offer an amenity to our neighbors and guests. And I would say that's sort of my line of questioning for parks. DoIT has done an amazing job. The technological advances that this city has seen in the past decade are really something remarkable. I would simply like to hear how we're going to continue to be as user-friendly to citizens and residents as we can be. And that means being able to pay bills online, being able to interface and request documents that used to be you'd have to show up to City Hall at. How do we sort of take the technological advancements that we made during the pandemic and allow that as a service for individuals as well? So it may likely mean more funding going forward for technological upgrade, but well-worthy investment in my opinion. BPDA, again, it's important that we have as much clarity and transparency. I do think that there's some good work happening there, but obviously many folks in the neighborhoods feel like the cake is baked, to use Councillor Flaherty's favorite expression. And we want to make sure that we have a great opportunity for community input going forward. As it relates to ISD, my simple request, which I'm now making for the 11th time, it's absolutely about funding as many inspectors as we need. The backlog is great, getting calls returned or getting action on items, and this isn't an indictment on anyone in the administration. It's simply that they're often, many of our ISD inspectors are spread way too thin, so we need to make sure that we have the proper staffing levels there so that we can effectively do our job. With this building boom, we're asking the men and women of ISD to do more with less continuously. So that's something that I'm really curious. And forgive me, I should know this, Madam Chair, but with Chief Irish ascending to the role of his new position, has a ISD commissioner been named yet, or is
Chris Lydon?
Chris Lydon, thank you. See, I didn't even know that. So look forward to discussing that with Chris. And just
wait, I might have mixed that up. Is it Sean? It's Sean Lydon.
Oh, Sean Lydon. Okay, great.
Sean Lydon. Sorry. We should
Yes, it's Sean.
It's Sean.
That may be from the legendary Jamaica Plain Lydon family. So if it's the same individual I'm thinking of, so that's good.
Sorry, I was fusing Chris English and Sean Lydon, which I shouldn't do. So
right, quite all right. So yeah, I mean, parks is obviously the bulk of my questions. ISD, though, it's absolutely about funding. We're asking for more and more to be done, and it can be frustrating when an issue arises. Our first call is to ISD, and again, this isn't anything against the men and women of ISD. It further illustrates the fact that they need better staffing so that they can accommodate the heavy workload. And then DoIT. Let's hear about how we can continue to make innovation work for the residents of the city of Boston. And BPDA, just looking forward to a discussion. First of all, it should be noted that I appreciate the fact that BPDA is showing up. For the first half of my career, BPDA would not come to any city council budget meetings because they thought they were exempt given their sort of unique governance structure, and that has changed. So that's important. But do look forward to a good Q&A on obviously, specifically net zero carbon building standards, what that's looking like. John Dalzell has done a great job sort of helping to shepherd that, but we This dovetails nicely with our conversation with Chief White Hammond and her crew, really hearing about efficiency standards, performance, net zero carbon construction, what that looks like. It's the Article 75 process that I'd love to hear what changes have been made, and stay tuned. There may be some legislative action that comes out of my office in that over the next couple of weeks as well. So look forward to that. So I think I covered everything. I think I stalled enough so that Ed Flynn could join us. So that's all I've got for this round, Madam Chair. Great to be with you, and thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt, for those excellent questions. And we always appreciate the coming attractions trailer for future legislation. So, all right. Yes, Councillor Ed Flynn, District 2, has joined us, and we'll be going to him next. So, Ed, we're just doing them all at once. So, Parks, ISD, DoIT, and BPDA.
Well, thank you, Councillor Bach, and thank you for your leadership. And I apologize for being a few minutes late here. So Parks, I'll go right into Parks. What's important to me and my constituents is the funding upgrades to Moakley Park. I wanted to get a good idea of what the upgrades would be, and especially some concern about the recreation fields as well as the resiliency measures. And when I mean recreation fields, I mean baseball fields, Babe Ruth fields that are important to the youth of my community. The residents would like to see the Babe Ruth field not only upgraded, but that renovations would take place in such a way that there is not a lost season for our kids. Some residents reached out to me about the swing set at Flaherty Park as well. I have heard from neighbors that are concerned about the conditions of the Blackstone Franklin Park, where sometimes there would be unleashed dogs in the park and it gets used as an unofficial dog park at times. What measures can we do to help residents who are concerned about off-leash dogs? Same goes at Meadow of Honor Park in South Boston, where there is a dog park literally right across the street on First Street. So this is a quality of life. It's a public health issue for many families. But I think there's a balance. I think both the children that play in the park and the dog owners can work together. But I think we also need signage around the parks and exactly what the rules are at parks. If in fact dogs are able to be unleashed, what are the rules? I didn't think they were to be unleashed, but I'd like to get an update on that. Having a healthy tree canopy is important, not only for fighting climate change, pollution, heat island effect, but neighborhood mental health and quality of life issues as well. Oftentimes residents talk about gas leaks, and they have a major impact on the killing of our trees. And I would like to ask, I want to know, anytime that there is a tree cut down in my district, I want to know about it beforehand, because I want to know what the community process is of notifying residents about the potential for cutting down a tree. I think the public notice right now is putting putting an ad in the newspaper and then placing a piece of paper on the tree itself to notify residents that a tree is being cut down. So we need to review those requirements and let residents weigh in on that important decision. And when the tree will be replaced, if it's going to be replaced. I think residents want to be part of the discussion, and they deserve to be part of the discussion. So what's the community process like? For instance, the trees out in the James Michael Curley Recreation Center, they have been there for years, and they were gone one morning. And neighbors along Columbia Road and across from Dave Boulevard called myself and Michael Flaherty, asking about what the process is, of what the process was, and when they'll be replaced. Some residents I have in the Back Bay, in the Beacon Hill, and in the Bay Village asked me, Chinatown, asked me to address public safety and public health issues in and around the Boston Common, the public gardens that you represent very well, Councilor Bach, and where my constituents thoroughly enjoy both parks, but they also want to make sure that all of our parks are safe and healthy for everybody, but especially for our seniors and for families that might want to visit and spend the day at the park, or children that want to go on the playground. So I'd like to get a little information on that. Could I go into DoIT, Councilor Bach? Is that okay? DoIT, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I was on a hearing 2 nights ago with the Human Rights Commission talking about digital equity as it relates to DoIT, but digital equity is an important issue to me. We've seen the great digital divide during this pandemic. So I want to know what the city's plan is to expand Wi-Fi. And I think we need free Wi-Fi in many residential areas of the city, especially in public housing developments and low-income communities as well. Any thoughts about the possibility of municipal broadband like other cities across the country? I actually think in Chattanooga, Tennessee as well has that. What are some of the grants available to address the needs of digital equity, as I mentioned, for low-income families who might have difficulty paying for internet service or computers, who was eligible for those grants? Let me head right into ISD. Funding, as Councilor O'Malley said, is always important. We're dealing with the ongoing large house parties, Airbnb compliance, after hours construction, pest and rodent control. We need funding. We need to hire more ISD inspectors. We passed something recently in the city council that people are able to cook or serve food from their house. Well, is this budget going to include more ISD inspectors? I was told that the ISD inspectors would be increased significantly because of this recent passage. So I hope that's the case. We just can't keep adding duties and tasks onto ISD inspectors and not hiring more ISD inspectors. It's unfair to them. It's not right. It's not how city government works. If you want to expand programs in the city, we have to pay for it. How many buildings inspectors are there in ISD? How large of an area does each inspector cover? How many cases do inspectors usually have to attend to on a particular week? What measures is ISD implementing to address the issue of pest and rodent control? Those are issues I've held a hearing on, critical issues throughout the city. How long does it usually take for a ZBA case to go from having an application submitted to having a ZBA date? Maybe more ONS questions would be appropriate. Will ZBA hearings and abutters meeting retain virtual meetings as part of the process, even after COVID restrictions are lifted? I think that's an important question that we want to focus on as well. I'll go right into BPDA. I'd like to know if we can get details about the improvements that are planned, short-term and long-term, at the Raymond Flynn Marine Industrial Park. Can we talk about what BPDA's plans are for the China Trade Center building in Chinatown? Who are the current occupants? I know the Michael Taylor's is president of the Urban College in the building. I know they do a terrific job as well. Who are the current occupants? And are we doing anything to attract local and minority of women-owned businesses there? There should be a place at that city-owned building, at that BPDA-owned building for woman-owned, minority-owned companies. What is BPDA doing to ensure that there are translation interpretation services available in community meetings? I think BPDA, BRA, and I don't carry water for anybody, but I think over the last 2 years, they've made progress on their improvements on making sure that language access is part of their community outreach. I want to acknowledge that and say thank you to them. And they're making progress on that. Certainly more needs to be done, but I'm glad that we are on the right path. How can residents ensure that they are fully participating in community meetings, community process? Our immigrant neighbors, people who may speak a different language, people with disabilities, we want to make sure that they are part of the process too. I encourage BPDA to work closely with the Mayor's Office of Persons with Disabilities, which they have been doing as well. But any project at the BPDA, I want to make sure that the Mayor's Commission on Disability Rights has the opportunity to weigh in on that project. What are we doing for enforcement to ensure developers are living up to their affordable housing requirements? We held a hearing a couple of years ago after they were selling units at market rates, as we may recall. So I think there was some type of a scam going, that these developers were not living up to their affordable housing requirements. And if I find out there's any developers doing that in my district, I don't want them ever to be doing development in my district ever again. I have zero tolerance for that. What are we doing to focus on affordable housing for more families, for immigrants, for seniors? If all of these are 1 and 2 bedrooms in the IDP program, families will have to move out of Boston as they grow, unfortunately. We'll be going back to in-person meetings when restrictions are lifted. So I'm concerned about the community process. We have a lot of people on the call last week on H and Broadway development project, but I fear many have missed out over the 15 months that aren't technical savvy, including many of those seniors, persons with disabilities as well. So I think we need to be back in person, let the community have their voices properly heard during community discussions. So that's all I have, Council Block. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for the important leadership you're providing during this Ways and Means budget process.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Thanks for those excellent and detailed questions. I'm going to be going back now to Councillor Braden, who's got her hand raised. And Councillor Mal, if you do have any follow-ups, let me know with a raised hand. Okay, cool. And then I'll go back to mine after that. So Councillor Braden.
I'd really like an inventory of all our cemeteries and our they're not only an important green space, but also as we, in our recent experience with COVID, we've seen an increase in burials in our cemeteries, and in our conversations with Chris Cook, I think the spaces available are going to run out in the next 20 years or so. And I'm wondering if we should be exploring alternatives to the traditional way to lay our loved ones to rest in cemeteries. Maybe explore some green burial options or other options. Let's see. I also want to echo Councillor Flynn's question about rodents and rodent control and how effective the use of dry ice is this year, and education of residents on the most effective way to try and mitigate the impacts, or how to sort of quell the massive increase in the number of rodents in our neighbourhoods. The tree canopy, we also hear that, we're losing tree canopy in privately owned property, and the city is trying to put more trees in, plant more trees, and it's sort of it's a losing proposition right now, because we're losing so much trees on private property. I really feel it would be benefit, look at educational programs to try and educate people about the huge benefit of having trees, so that and to get more buy-in into the concept of actually trying to preserve our tree canopy. We've had some concerns about the slowness of being able to replace trees. If there's a tree being taken down and there's a tree space, a street tree, it takes a long time. It takes up to 2 years to replace a tree. So from local reports. So why is it so slow? And is there anything we can do to expedite that process? With regard to the BPDA, we had asked for, when a PNF comes out, it's a huge document with hundreds of pages. We had asked for an executive summary that would be easily translated, that would include all the pertinent information about affordability and number of units, etc. I'd like an update on where they are with that process, and are all the new PNFs have that option. When we return to in-person community meetings to review projects, one of the things that's happened during COVID, we've actually maintained or increased the amount of community participation with more people attending, because of, being able to join from home. What are the plans for a hybrid model to enable broader community participation as we move forward post-COVID? There's also a project on 1047 Com Ave, which is a project that was built several years ago. It was approved to provide 26 IDP units, and then the owner promptly leased it to universities. So for several years in a row, we have not had access. We've never had access to those 26 IDP units. I would like a status update on that process, and if we are not going to have those 26 IDP units provided by the owner of the property, then what mitigation or compensation are we going to get to make up for that huge loss of affordable units in our district? And I think, oh yes, and in terms of the affordably furthering fair housing legislation, where are we at in that implementation of that new initiative as well? I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. And thanks for those good questions. Councillor O'Malley, further follow-ups.
I am actually good for this round. Thank you. That I was saying I'm all set. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay. Sorry. The hand wave, it's hard. It's ambiguous. Okay, great. Well, then I will, I'll put some more questions on the record. And I should just say to colleagues, like, thank you so much for being here, and totally understand if you have to drop off. I think I had put some questions for DoIT on the record. I might come up with some more for them, but in the meantime, BPDA, is something I've been talking to them a lot about, but I would love to kind of hear them on is what they're thinking about with Article 85 and how to kind of put historic preservation earlier in our planning processes, and our development processes. I think there's pretty broad consensus at this point that what we currently do is frustrating to all concerned. If you really want to save a historic building, then Article 85 comes too late. And if you're a developer and folks wait until Article 85, you're very anxious about the fact that it's sort of coming after all the plans and everything's been drawn up. And so I think the answer is to put, considerations about how we preserve our built history as part of growing the city right up top earlier, and make that part of the conversation so it can be a productive conversation. And I know there's some good thinking at BPDA on that. And I do think that because it's really about our development and planning process, that can't just sit over in landmarks. It has to be a thing that BPDA is thinking and working on. So I would love to hear more about that. Definitely would echo second Councillor O'Malley on wanting an update on the zero net carbon building zoning initiative and also the coastal flood resiliency zoning overlay districts. And some more, again, some more sort of details on, where we are with staffing the affirmatively furthering fair housing effort. I know I don't think it's like, people started to come over it and under it in mid-March. And I think we're still waiting for kind of a bunch of proposals to be filed that are compliant with it, but just want to know where we kind of are on staffing and setup there. And, a big thing that I've actually filed on and plan to hold a hearing on later in the year after the budget stops eating up all my time, is this question of how to really robustly use BPDA's tools around kind of some of these like more aggressive ideas about how to use public land for public purposes. I think there's real opportunity to use the BPDA tools for land trusts, for like shared, everything from, we saw the Walter Street example when it comes to open space. I was having a drink at the Anchor in Charlestown in the Navy Yard a few nights ago, and that's it's like a business, but the profit share goes to the community and hosts lots of community programs. And that is on BPD land. I just think there's a bunch of opportunity to do really robust things. And I also think there's an opportunity to use these tools when it comes to the kind of climate change mitigation and land assembly we're going to need for some of the bigger projects there. And I would love to hear how the department is really thinking about that. Because I think sometimes that's what gets lost. What's tricky is that, we have a long and difficult history between the BPDA and the community. But what I don't want us to lose sight of is that the BPDA is the custodian of a bunch of the tools that could best enable us to do some of the things we most want to do in the coming decades in terms of making the city like for people and furthering these public purposes and heck, getting more land for affordable housing. So I'm really interested in kind of the extent to which the BPDA is thinking about these things and planning for these things. And I'm gonna, like I said, I've got a hearing order filed, so I'm not gonna make them do that whole hearing in the budget, but to the extent that the way they're thinking about their ground leases and their real estate portfolio relates to this and it relates to the budget, I do want to hear a bit about that. I think that on the ISD front, people have asked a bunch of the questions I wanted to ask, and I totally agree about the, adding responsibilities on ISD and then still having level employees. So I think we need to dig into that, Councillor Flynn. I also think I would love to get a check back in on the short-term rental stuff. I know that we had talked about, maybe needing to come up with a more robust certification process for when folks say that they're operating kind of institutionally affiliated executive suites, because it seems like that can be a pretty big loophole that people are not really doing anything to prove. And so talking to ISD about that feels important to me. I would like to understand how ISD kind of formally thinks about its process for approving at night or off hours construction. We've had a number of projects, especially in the West End, that are approved for nighttime work because of safety concerns, but it's extremely disruptive for residents. We've got folks who are, being driven out of their mind, and it's the same thing up at parcel 12 over the highway. And in both cases, you're over highway and MBTA infrastructure. So there's some degree of you can't do anything about it. But I wonder if there are ways to be kinder to residents in terms of, whether it's compensatory, like we have some hours off during the early morning and later evening, to try to at least provide some time where people don't have all the sound, and just would love to know how they think through that. Because it's a frequent complaint that I hear. And then I think I got a sufficient answer on the security question about the Be Local app from OED yesterday, so I don't need to ask that. And then on parks, I have some more questions. So I did want to ask about, I just think the parks have been really essential to all of us in this time, but we're still sitting at this budget for parks. I know the parks advocates are always asking for us to try to bump that up to just at least 1% of the city's operating budget, and we're still not there. And parks is certainly lower than it was historically in terms of employees. And I just think that, you know, people love these parks so much, and we are adding in the urban forestry world, the urban wilds world, et cetera, we are adding to the portfolios. Like, how are we thinking about that structurally? How are we exploring new funding options for the parks? Can we just can we really talk about what the budget vision there is? With the urban forestry plan, I've heard something that I'm hoping isn't true, but I just would love it to be confirmed or disconfirmed. I heard that perhaps we're just doing street trees and not the sort of the trees in the heart of our parks, are like, those aren't being inventoried. And, you know, obviously we want to track like all those things, tree condition and care inside the parks too, because that's, you know, that's part of the whole picture of how we know about how many trees we have and how healthy they are in all of Boston. And so just want to understand if this is like a cost thing, if those are being added later. Are we hoping to piggyback on existing tree inventories from like Emerald Necklace, Esplanade? If so, if we've been working with those partners, and how are other public trees on like other agency land, DCR and stuff being coordinated? I just feel like this is a holistic assessment, needs to be measured that way. Yeah, I think I already mentioned the Parcel Priority Program and Community Preservation Act funds to purchase wild areas. And just wondering if we're also looking at that in sort of high needs dense areas like, you know, Mission Hill in my district, et cetera. Yeah. And I guess just then, and then I did get a question just into the Ways and Means account about sort of at what point Parks lists its capital programs for public consideration, because I know there was some concern. I think there was a new bridge built at in a park in Franklin Park. I'm sorry, this isn't my district, so sort of up by Scarborough Pond last year, and people felt like there wasn't really the community process that there might have been around that. And I would love to understand sort of how Parks thinks about its community process with capital projects in general. I mean, I've seen it play out in some of our more traditional things. So they've done a great job with the community process with both the Mission Hill Playground and the Clarendon Street Playground in my district in the last few months, and been really responsive to constituents in both cases. But I think maybe with a playground project, we sort of know how to engage the community. What about something like that, like a bridge in the historic park or other such things? How does Parks think about the community engagement aspect of that? Yeah. So I think those might be my questions for now. Certainly a report back from DoIT on sort of where it is, again, without trying to turn the budget hearing into another hearing. There is this surveillance oversight ordinance before the council, and I know that from our last working session that we're hearing that there's definitely some work that needs to be done there to kind of make it compatible with the variety of digital things that the city does. And would just love to understand, because one of the things that came up there was the idea that might be putting a mandate on DoIT that would add a bunch of cost. And so to Councillor Flynn's point about unfunded mandates, trying to understand sort of where they are with that and what resources, if any, might be needed if something like that came into play, or how they're thinking about it would be great. Okay, those are my main questions. So I'm going to go back, Councillor Braden and Flynn, and see if you guys had any follow-ups. Otherwise, I may hang tight just till 11 and then bring us out.
Yeah, no, I think I've covered most of the questions that I had. The only other question is what somebody else mentioned. It was the issue about dog parks and the rules. It's really impossible to enforce off-leash dog parks, but even just how many dog parks do we have in the city? I know we have unofficial ones that are sort of don't come up to the usual standard of an official dog park. Maybe an update on the dog parks and where we are with establishing some more, because I know especially in our district here, we have a lot of young people who have dogs, and having them be responsible dog owners, and also the notion that because it's a public park, the dogs can run loose on the off leash is a widespread perception, but it's not the rule. So it's difficult to enforce. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you so much. Yes, no, I think the dog parks are a really important topic. And to Councillor Flynn's point, if you don't have enough dog parks, people make informal dog parks, and that creates an issue for other dog users, not dog users, other park users. So it's one of the reasons I think we're excited to finally have a proper fenced-in dog park proposed for the Boston Common, because that is a really important constituency that uses the Common, but there's also other constituencies. And so,
I also think it raises the issue under parcel priority, that identifying little parcels in the neighborhoods that might be able to be converted into a green space or a dog park. I know there are some unclaimed parcels across the city, and that's a potential space for creating some more official dog parks that would be a great asset to local neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. All right. Well, I think I am just going to hold tight for 5 minutes just to give any colleague who's going to drop in on us at 11 a chance to show up. But otherwise, this will wrap up soon. So councilors Flynn and Braden, thanks for being here, but don't feel like you need to hang out.
Thank you. I really appreciate these working sessions, because it helps just bounce ideas out and hear what the issues are in another district. And it may be an issue in my district, but it may not be, or maybe something we haven't even addressed or looked at. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Council Block. I just had one follow-up comment. I don't mind spending city money on dog parks, especially if it's needed. But I also understand if we are building a dog park, we have to have rules and regulations about that dog park. And if there's another park right down the street for children, does that also mean that dog owners are also allowed to go to that park as well? So I think we need to discuss having dog parks, and I'm in favor of them. But if there's also a dog park and then there's a children's park right next to it, let's encourage people that are dog owners to go to the dog park and give the children that are in the next park the opportunity to enjoy the grass and run around without being subjected to unleashed dogs. So I just think it's a question of people knowing the rules and being respectful of each other. And we love our dogs, we love our pets, but I also want to provide the best parks and open space and athletic fields for our kids, and give them an opportunity to exercise and play sports and have fun with their classmates and friends in a safe and healthy environment. So I think there's a balance. I think there's a balancing act. I think we can work out solutions, but I think a solution that doesn't work is not talking about it and not bringing people together. And I think that's been the case for a while. And I think most people agree that compromise can take place on both sides.
Totally agree. No, and I think it's totally fair and more than justified, right? For parents to want there to be places where their children can play, where there won't be off-leash dogs. That's just, So yeah, that's our job, right? Is to try to navigate these competing interests and make it so that everyone's got a place in the city. So yes, we will definitely ask the commissioner about that. And one question I had meant to put on the record and forgotten was just around wicked free Wi-Fi. whether expanding that is the best approach for reliable, secure, and free internet access for residents, or to your point, Councillor Flynn, if we should be investing more robustly in municipal broadband, which is kind of my instinct. My instinct is that municipal broadband is one of those things where like it feels to us right now like it's expensive and a heavy lift, but like it's going to be a critical piece of infrastructure for decades. And so I feel like in the long run, we'll get there because, even just nationally, we're being outcompeted by places like South Korea and other places that are just like laying really great internet for everybody. And I just feel like if we don't get on that sooner rather than later, we're going to regret it. So.
No, good point. And my final point, Council Balk, is I also want to highlight the professionalism and hard work of our Parks Department staff, especially during this difficult year. They've been out there every day and every night, cleaning up, making our parks beautiful. And at times it's been challenging. We've had many needles on parks and grounds, and we've had homeless people as well using them. But I think the Parks Department have been very professional, very compassionate, and have worked hard during this difficult time. The Parks team also wants to make sure that the parks are ready for our kids, for young people that want to play sports, and for seniors that may just want to walk around and enjoy the park. And I know what I love seeing most about our parks. I love seeing persons with disabilities using parks. They have various leagues at Moakley Park. It might be a softball league, it might be a walking club or a tennis group. And I admire them for their dedication, for their resilience, but they continue working hard, they continue exercising, and there's nothing better, in my opinion, than seeing people and young people and seniors using a park on a beautiful summer day. It's healthy, it's what Boston's all about. And I'd rather be down Moakley Park on a Saturday afternoon watching my son play baseball than be at Martha's Vineyard drinking a glass of wine. There's nothing better than talking to residents of your city, talking to your constituents, and talking to the parks team, and how we can work together and improve the conditions of all of our parks. So, Council Block, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Sounds great, Councillor Flynn.
All right.
Thank you for being here with me. And now that we've passed 11 o'clock, I am going to end this. So this working session of the City Council's Ways and Means Committee is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.